Thank you for joining us for this look at the best original reporting from KPBS News this week. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Coming up, who will lead San Diego's public schools? Hear from the two finalists being considered for the role of superintendent during a challenging time for the district. Gas prices are surging, but can California do anything about it? We'll run through some of the ideas being floated to give drivers some relief. And Major League Baseball delays the start of its new season. Those who rely on the games tell us how the lockout will hurt their bottom line. And we start with the major story on the minds of so many of us. Ukraine is being pummeled by Russian attacks 24/7. Now, a week into this war, San Diegans are watching and wondering how they can help. KPBS reporter Kitty Alvarado has been telling those stories all week. Here are some of the acts of generosity she's come across.
Thank you. I've prayed over this hat, whoever gets it. I pray that they'll be safe.
Derek Morris was moved to donate this military-grade helmet, along with some goggles, by the images of ordinary people in Ukraine defending their country.
You see people standing in the street in front of vehicles with no protection.
He brought them to the House of Ukraine, one of the international cottages at Balboa Park, where an effort is underway to help those staying behind in a country being shelled and bombed by Russia around the clock.
All country is helping. Nobody just sits and...
That's true patriotism.
Yeah.
Alla Boyko, a volunteer at the House of Ukraine, says they especially need gently used military-grade armor, helmets, and boots.
Because we have a lot of people who want to fight in Ukraine, men, but they don't have any protection. They just on the street of the cave, and they can be killed anytime.
Among them, her own family.
Because of bombing, kids are scared. Her husband is military as well. I'm praying every day, and I'm scared because, they don't have any bomb shelter.
Walter Scranton, a Vietnam vet, says he knows how ugly war can be and was compelled to come bring in a bulletproof vest he had in his stash.
This is heavy.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I hope it helps somebody.
Yes. Yes.
It's a horrible situation. It really is, but
For all of us.
They'll see it through.
Yeah, thank you very much.
No problem.
May I hug you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
These donations will help ordinary people turned heroes live to fight another day, just like Boyko's cousin, who wanted people here to know just how much that means to them.
They can be on attack anytime, and she was very grateful, very thankful to you guys.
Donations given from the heart and accepted with love for Ukraine.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, this one's prayed over. Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the help.
Kitty Alvarado, KPBS News.
Thank you, Mama. I'm so sorry.
Daria Nadar is getting a lot of love from her customers at her new bakery in the Hillcrest neighborhood of San Diego.
Oh, my dad. Yeah.
While her dream of opening her bakery, Oh My Cake, has become a reality, her family is living a nightmare.
My family are unfortunately in the center of all this. They're in Kiev, which is getting bombed right now. Probably the second we're talking. They sleep in the basement just in case, God forbid, anything will blow off next to them.
Feeling helpless, she decided to use her talents to raise awareness and funds for Ukraine, since getting money directly to her family is not easy. She's donating 25% of her sales to the National Bank of Ukraine's special account.
It's also food, medication, any type of protection that we can provide and help them.
And the people are responding and buying up her delicious treats.
They've been coming like crazy. Yesterday, the shelves were empty. I'm just overwhelmed with support.
During this time, people with loved ones in Ukraine, like Nadia Hay was, are trying to help. She also says the National Bank of Ukraine is a safe option.
The military and also like all of your first responders, the firemen, the policemen, people that have to help out. There are teachers that are still teaching classes in those subways because they need to keep the children calm. The National Bank is the best way to get the money straight to Ukraine. With no wait, it's just your bank transfer.
What concerns me is the impact then of the actual conflict on Ukraine.
Dr. Alan Jin, an economics professor at the University of San Diego, says he worries for the people who have to flee and the humanitarian disaster looming. He says having organizations on the ground like the International Red Cross and World Central Kitchen is important. But it's just as important to vet organizations before you give, as many will take advantage of the crisis to take from those in need. And as tough as sanctions will be on ordinary Russians, they are necessary. I
think the hope maybe is that if there is widespread difficulties, that might cause people then to rise up in protest and maybe impact the government that way.
He also says the effects will be felt here too through higher prices, and it's not just oil.
Higher prices for meat, higher prices for grain. Ukraine is the fourth largest exporter of corn in the world. They're the eighth largest exporter of wheat.
But he urges we keep things in perspective.
That is minor compared to what the people in Ukraine are suffering right now.
And he applauds the efforts of ordinary San Diegans reaching out to ease their suffering. And helping can be as easy and delicious as cake. Or as Daria says,
Тортик – це любов, кохання.
Cake is love. Kitty Alvarado, KPBS News.
And Kitty Alvarado also covered local reaction to President Joe Biden's State of the Union address this week, which focused heavily on the war in Ukraine. Our coverage continues online, and that's where you can find all of our local reporting supplemented by national coverage from NPR and PBS NewsHour. Just go to kpbs.org and listen to our KPBS podcasts and stream all of our content on the KPBS YouTube page. The weeks ahead will be decisive for the San Diego Unified School District as it weighs who should be its new leader. This week, parents got a chance to directly hear from the two superintendent finalists. KPBS education reporter MG Perez was there as they made their case in a public forum.
The candidates.
Both Dr. Lamont Jackson and Dr. Susan Enfield started their professional education careers as teachers in a classroom. Saturday afternoon, they were back on campus on the auditorium stage of Wilson Middle School, face to face for the first time, determined to become San Diego Unified's next superintendent.
I think that this is a community that deeply cares about its children and its public schools. And that is a place that I think any superintendent would be honored to live, lead, and serve in.
We will be about diversity, we will be about equity, and we will be unapologetic about being inclusive in the San Diego Unified School District.
In my district, I would love to tell you that.
Interpreters translated every response from the candidates as they answered questions submitted in person and online during a live stream of the event. Parents, teachers, and even students wanted to hear about solutions to racism and inequity in San Diego schools. Statistics show that black students in San Diego Unified are 3 times more likely to be suspended than white students.
Leadership is not a popularity contest, and when you are genuinely, authentically leading for equity to serve all children equally well, you will make unpopular decisions, but you have to stand by what you believe in, and I believe deeply that we can do better as a public education system.
We need training for our adults because we recognize that we do have bias and we do act through racist behaviors. And we have to live into the fear that this may have been how we were raised, but it does not mean this is how we will remain.
On the topic of students with special needs, Dr. Enfield has a plan of inclusion instead of separation, and Dr. Jackson will make changes to individual educational programs known as the IEP.
Often we write our IEP goals and we are now teaching to the IEP rather than teaching to the child. And that is fundamental.
Yep. Figuring out how we can make sure that every child sees themselves as included in their school community. And that means working to dismantle as many self-contained programs as we can.
Public reviews came quickly. Katrina Hassan is a parent.
I did like the fact that Dr. Jackson mentioned positive discipline, right? And the fact that Dr. Enfield mentioned building relationships with students.
Melissa Agudelo is a co-principal at Lincoln High School.
I appreciate appreciated the specificity of the questions. I thought that the moderator and the lists in general were the right questions to ask. Questions around kids of color, questions around special education students.
The public input isn't over yet. District officials have set up an online option for anyone who still wants to make a comment with a quick click on the superintendent search tab on the district's website. A decision on who gets the job is expected within a month. MG Perez, KPBS News.
And here are some of the stories getting the most attention from our online audience this week. Andrew Bowen reports on the city of Coronado's slow action to create a housing plan that meets state law. Claire Tregeser investigates why nonprofits in Chula Vista say the city has not been a helpful partner. And Tanya Thorne reports on SDG&E pulling in big earnings while continuing to raise rates for customers. If you drive a car, at least one that runs on gas, then you're feeling it. Prices are now pushing past $5 a gallon at many local gas stations with no relief in sight. As John Carroll reports, there are some ideas floating around, but it will take some political will to make it happen.
The average price per gallon in the county notched its largest increase since September of 2019 over the last day, up 8 cents to an average $4.97 a gallon, its 14th record high in 16 days. Stories about high gas prices typically include interviews with drivers at the pump who are upset about those prices, but we already know most of you don't like those prices. So this story instead is focused on ideas from different sides of the political spectrum to do something about it. San Diego civil rights advocate Shane Harris wants Governor Newsom to declare a state of emergency, which would allow him to suspend the state gas tax for up to 90 days. The tax is now 51 cents a gallon.
It's about those everyday people that I'm thinking about in the urban inner city who will struggle every time they go to the pump.
The unfolding disaster in Ukraine is getting much of the blame for the most recent surge in prices, and Harris says that's what spurred him to act. But calls to suspend the tax are not new.
The reason I want to suspend the gas tax is because gas prices are outrageously high.
Republican Assemblymember Kevin Kiley, who represents the suburbs west of Sacramento, has introduced a bill which would suspend the state tax for 6 months.
Especially since the governor's talking about a $60 billion surplus, supposedly, the least we could do is give Californians, just temporarily, although I'd like to see it be more permanent, but at least for 6 months, some relief.
Governor Newsom has offered to suspend the next hike in the gas tax, but that would only be about 3 cents. Even that received a cool response from legislative leaders. When we asked San Diego State Senator Toni Atkins about it today, her office issued a statement which says in part that she will evaluate proposals and the state's financial condition in the coming months. But from an economist's point of view, support for suspending the tax.
The money raised from the gas tax is normally used to fund infrastructure type of programs. But again, with the state running such a huge surplus, I can see that some of that surplus can be directed to replacing the gas tax funds themselves.
Even if the tax is suspended, current estimates say we could easily see hikes of between 50 to 75 cents in the coming weeks, gobbling up any tax suspension savings, putting us right back in the unenviable position we're in now. John Carroll, KPBS News.
And since that story, the average price for gas in San Diego has jumped beyond $5 per gallon. And that includes a 13-cent jump overnight from Thursday to Friday, according to AAA. Part of our coverage includes a Midday Edition segment with the Union Tribune's energy reporter. You can listen to that anytime at kpbs.org. Electric cars are looking pretty good right now, if you can find one. California is working toward a future when all new cars sold will be zero emission. But even renewable batteries have a shelf life. KPBS SciTech reporter Thomas Fudge met with those who are finding ways to recycle old batteries when the time comes.
A lab at San Diego State University is filled with bundles of wires, some of them testing battery cells. And this black steel case, which contains about 300 cells and weighs more than 1,000 pounds. It's an electric car battery that once inhabited a Nissan Leaf. Now imagine about 1 million battery cases like that being dumped into California's waste and recycling stream every year as electric vehicles and their batteries reach the end of their lives. That's what could happen soon after 2035 when all new cars sold in California must be zero carbon emission based on an executive order by Governor Newsom. The California Energy Commission is funding 4 demonstration projects to find ways to repurpose electric car batteries. 2 of those projects are happening in San Diego County, and one of them is right here in the engineering building at San Diego State.
Some of them may have enough power or energy capacity that we can use for energy storage projects.
San Diego State electrical engineering professor Chris Mee is one person looking for a way to reuse electric car batteries.
If you extend the life for another 10 years, you delay the whole life cycle of those batteries, right?
When Chris Mee speaks about using the batteries for energy storage, he's talking about storing solar energy. That would turn car batteries into solar energy banks for businesses and agencies that can make withdrawals whenever the sun doesn't shine. When he talks about the life cycle of an EV battery, it's a complex story of both energy generation and energy inputs required to make the battery. First, you have to mine the materials needed to make it, all that lithium, cobalt, nickel, and manganese. Then you have to manufacture it. Its first life comes as an EV battery. The second life could be as that bank for solar power. Finally, it has to be recycled. Kevin Wood, professor of mechanical engineering at SDSU, is also working on the demonstration project that's funded by the California Energy Commission. He says lithium-ion car batteries are typically retired when an electric car loses that crucial mileage range. But even at that point, the batteries still have 60 to 80% of their energy life left.
So why don't we try and utilize those batteries, right? And use those systems that we already have in place, that there's no extra energy input required, right? And use those for grid scale energy storage.
California is leading the way in the use of electric vehicles. The governor's office reports California has 10% of the nation's cars, but 40% of all zero-emission cars. Caroline Godkin is Deputy Secretary for Environmental Policy at the Cal EPA. Godkin says used-up electric vehicle batteries are hazardous waste, and their elements ultimately need to be recycled, even if they have a second life as an energy storage vessel. But there's another good reason to recycle them.
As we think about our circular economy, and particularly the critical materials which are in these batteries, they're also a source of these critical materials to be put back into the manufacturing process.
Scientists Chris Mee and Kevin Wood say one key issue is finding a way to make battery reuse economically feasible. Wood says China exports newly mined lithium iron phosphate batteries. They're not as good as car batteries, but they're quite inexpensive and good enough to use for solar energy storage. Wood says it may not make sense for a customer to buy a repurposed electric car battery when a new one from China will cost not much more.
Sustainability and cost are 2 really, really important things, and they're not always correlated, right? Sustainability a lot of times costs more money.
He says there are a lot of challenging debates to come about environmental sustainability and the cost of it.
And the reality of the situation is cost a lot of times wins.
Cal EPA's Car Battery Advisory Group expects to finalize its report on reuse and recycling of batteries this month. Then it'll be passed on to the California legislature with the expectation that new laws will follow. Some big questions remain, like who will be responsible for reusing and recycling these batteries? Wood says that is one of those challenging debates people will have to before 2035, when all new cars in California will have to be zero carbon emission. Thomas Fudge, KPBS News.
Take a trip to San Diego's Balboa Park, and you can't miss them. Vendors selling everything from hot dogs to homemade bracelets have a thriving marketplace in these public places. But as KPBS reporter Jacob Ayer reports, new rules might make it harder for them to do business.
The San Diego City Council's now approved legislation on street vending will regulate the time, place, and manner that street vendor businesses operate, including large cutbacks in popular tourist areas. Angela Herrera is a Chinese immigrant and a street vendor who started selling jewelry in Balboa Park 6 months ago after her other job was impacted by the pandemic.
During the COVID, I lost a lot of my last customers, and the vending just helped me pick up my life. And here's a lot of tourists. And when I do my jewelry, the people like my artwork.
Street vendors like Donald Bengal acknowledge the upcoming changes in San Diego will relieve vendor overcrowding and help with the enforcement of permitting and licensing. But he says losing low-cost food options like his family's hot dog and agua fresca stand could price out many park visitors and put stress on his livelihood.
So, you know, it's I have a full-time job. It pays well, but it's not enough for this kind of inflation that's been built up through just to support my family. I got my son in the back, you know, and we can't afford the child care that, you know, to live a healthy life here in San Diego.
The council passed the ordinance after a meeting featuring lively voices from both sides on what's become a divisive issue. Councilmember Jennifer Campbell spearheaded the proposal and says it strikes a balance for all San Diegans.
This ordinance will help provide the appropriate support to vendors while promoting equitable access to our public spaces and protecting the public health and safety of our communities.
Herrera says there's a better solution for street vendors at Balboa Park.
If the park, they can give us a permanent place, you know, of course we don't mind to pay a little bit fee. That's for us good too. If they can put us to the lottery system like a performance, we will love to have this system running. Because for us will be fair.
The proposal was adopted on an 8-1 vote, with Councilwoman Vivian Moreno voting no. The proposal would go into effect at the end of March if signed by Mayor Todd Gloria, as expected. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
And one place that won't be doing any business in the weeks ahead is Petco Park. Major League Baseball has already canceled the first 6 Padres home games, which will hurt those who earn a living in the gas lamp. As John Carroll reports, it's all part of the deadlock between team owners and the players' union.
2-2. Fernando, a high fly ball to deep left.
The sights and sounds Padres fans and fans of every major league team had been longing for, sights and sounds that were supposed to begin at Petco on March 31st. Not now. This from Padres chairman and owner Peter Seidler on the team's Facebook page. We are working to build a consistently winning team that you deserve, and I cannot wait to be together with you again at Petco Park. Seidler going on to say the team needs fans' support. Scrolling down shows that support is tenuous. A sample from the hundreds of comments shows fans are upset with owners and players. Instead of addressing the fans, maybe you should address the other owners and make sure all of you realize fans don't need baseball. Baseball needs fans. I'm mad at these guys, both sides. At this time, I don't care if there's a season or not. Way to go. Society hasn't had enough going on with COVID and Putin, but I hope you guys work out how many Ferraris and yachts you can each have. And sadly, the fans are the real losers here. Overpriced players and greedy ownership have made it impossible for a lot of fans and families to attend a game. Here at Petco, park maintenance continues. They just resodded the lawns on the north side of the park, and they're keeping things nice and clean. But business owners like Brant Crenshaw here at Social Tap say they're looking down the barrel of a disaster.
It's pretty crushing. We're all pretty deflated around here right now.
Like the fans on Facebook, Crenshaw says there's plenty of blame to go around.
We got millionaires fighting billionaires over money.
As it stands now, the first 2 series of games, or 91 in total, are canceled. Crenshaw says that's all it takes to take the steam out of opening day.
People aren't going to be fired up to come to a new opening day that's a month or a week or 2 months later than what the normal buzz is on, April 1st opening day or March 31st this year. Like, it's not going to be the same.
Now, business owners like Crenshaw and fans wonder if baseball will ever be the same and whether it can survive a season delay that so far has no end in sight. John Carroll, KPBS News.
As we close out a rough week, there is some joy and beauty to be had in North County. Tanya Thorne visited the famous Carlsbad flower fields, which are now open for visitors.
The Carlsbad flower fields have opened, and Fred Clark, the general manager, says he's excited to offer a colorful escape to visitors.
You come here and you can't help but have a smile on your face, feel like your cares and worries are lifted off, at least for a little bit, and then you get back to regular life.
Clark says last year's indoor COVID restrictions had people flooding the flower fields, and they expect the same, if not more, visitors this year. That's why they have made their tickets available online only. The flower fields are open from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., and a time slot must be reserved in advance for entry. 1, 2. But the biggest draw is the photo ops.
We have seen on Instagram pictures of the field and the flowers, and I think it looks like that's what we wanted to bring some outfits to take photos here.
Karina Bravo is visiting from Cancun. Her cousin Argy Ponce, an Oceanside resident, didn't hesitate to get tickets opening week.
I said, it's open, let's go now. Let's book and let's go before it's too late. And the weather is perfect.
It's a sign of springtime, the opening of the Carlsbad flower fields. And visitors from near and far come to take a look. And businesses feel the impact too, because they see a boost in business. Brett Schanzenbach with the Carlsbad Chamber of Commerce says retailers look forward to the window of business the flower fields bring in.
80 million ranunculus, are going to be produced and distributed, and all the people who come for that, it's feeding our restaurants, it's feeding our our local hotels, it's feeding the retailers in the area. It really does drive quite a bit of activity here.
The flower fields are open until Mother's Day. Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
We hope that you enjoyed this look at KPBS News. This week, I'm Maya Trabulsi. Thanks for joining us.